it really is, I think, kind of shocking, how much that they just sort of they rolled over and gave him. We followed this really closely, um, in Oakland, and just watching how quick they approved all this money in Nevada was blew me away. I think one thing that I noticed, being in California, all of our all of our state legislature, everyone in the state legislature, that's their full-time job. They do it all the time, and they have a lot of staff. And there didn't, these part-time legislatures in Nevada, they're the speaker of the house, he's like an attorney, for, I think, he's either an attorney, or he runs car dealerships or something. I don't even know, but it's nuts. Like, and they didn't seem to have any staff, because the people presenting it to them, the experts presenting it to them, were literally the A's lobbyist. I was
Yeah.
just like, you don't have anybody, you don't have like a congressional research somebody or
Right.
other to it. And it just was, I was just shocking seeing this amount of money just go out the door. Um, yeah, crazy.
But that's not unusual, right? Even in places
Yeah.
that have full-time legislatures, right? I mean, it was shoved through at the last minute with very little discussion. And when the Buffalo Bills got their money from New York State has a regular, full-time legislature and all that. But it was the same thing where it was like, okay, here, you're going to approve this, right? And everybody sort of said, I don't know, what does leadership say? And then they just voted for it. And there was nobody did any economic studies, nobody did hearings, nobody did any of that. So it really does come down to like, how much pull both the political leadership and the business leadership has. If they can sort of, rally the troops and say, okay, we're going to get everybody on board here, and everybody's going to say, okay, fine, we're on board. And it was a fight, right? I mean, this thing did go into an extra session. It did, I remember watching all that stuff. There was constant back and forth about it, what are you going to give us? But I think everybody knew in the end, right? It was like about naming your price, right? It wasn't about, is this
Yeah.
going to get approved? It was, okay, what do we have to give you?
I just was nuts. It's like, okay, so we're never going to make you pay taxes, but you're going to do good things for the community. You're going to give us a community skybox. I'm like, dude, just ask them to pay their taxes, and then you can
Yep.
use whatever you want with that money. You can do whatever you want with the money. You don't have to take it in an in kind, whatever. Anyway, oof.
Well,
It is nuts.
yeah, well, I
Alex,
was
go
going to
ahead.
say, yeah,
I'm getting mad.
no, 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 go. I've just got something to say. Go for it, Hal. Go for it. Yeah, what do you got? What do you got?
You know, I think I wonder, seeing we'll see what happens with the Bears and the White Sox, but I wonder if these much more, these solidly liberal. I mean, I guess I was shocked about the New York giveaway to the Bills. I thought for certain they would be a little bit smarter, but you know what? New York politicians have confused me a lot recently. But it could be. I wonder if a lot of sort of these blue, or these more liberal politicians, have started to kind of figure out that this is just giveaways to billionaires. I'm not sure that Illinois is ready to roll over for Jerry Reinsdorf, and certainly what was being offered in Oakland always seemed to me to be like, hey, this offsite infrastructure stuff, we're going to do this anyway. Hey, this tax district on this big parking lot, the only way this big parking lot's getting redeveloped is if this thing sort of happens anyway. It also wasn't the sales tax. The sales tax was still going to be to the going back to Oakland and California. They weren't giving that up. I wonder, if do you see sort of liberal politicians standing up more to these teams? And if so, are we just going to see these teams leaving these areas, like the A's leaving Oakland, potentially the White Sox leaving Chicago? Or do you think these other places are still going to roll over?
Yeah, I've been waiting for like this groundswell of either uh, the populace or elected officials, right, to sort of start pushing back on this stuff. And it has happened occasionally, I got called in to testify before Congress once because Henry Waxman and Dennis Kucinich, were holding hearings on this on tax use of tax exempt bonds. So and you will get this sort of weird, not really a coalition, but like occasional progressives, right, who are like upset, why are we giving all this money to rich people when we could be spending it on other things? And then occasional like libertarian conservatives, right, who are like, we just don't like spending tax money on anything, so certainly we don't like spending it on this, right? So, but the problem is that it seems to be less who's in power that determines these things than just the fact that anybody in power sort of sees it as their business supporting local businesses, right? And there's just the fact that you have local businesses, and especially, ones that are prominent, like a sports team, have such sway. And, I imagine that when you're mayor, everybody around you, if you're, going to parties with lobbyists and other elected officials and business leaders and all that, right, are saying to you, you got to figure out a way of doing something for these people, right? You got to get something done. So J.B. Pritzker, right, the governor of Illinois, who's a Democrat, is saying, well, really don't see giving a lot of tax money to this, although he always says, unless we get something back for it, which is a big caveat.
Right.
But
Right.
if you look at Brandon Johnson, right, is the mayor of Chicago who was just elected, and who's a big,
Yeah.
progressive, who was, I remember when I was out in Chicago during the election, the run up to the election, and everybody was really excited about, the progressives were really excited about, this is somebody who's not going to be the kind of, sort of corrupt, centrist mayor that Chicago has had a lot, that's just going to, roll over for businesses. And one of the first things he does is say, oh, this will be really great if we can, get a bunch of public money for the Bears and the White Sox. I think part of it is it's mostly state money. So he's like, well, that's great for me because I'm not the one paying for it. But you would think there's a principle of I don't want my constituents to be paying for this through their state taxes or their city taxes. But again, that's just not how local electeds think. And it's amazing the degree to which, people who are, you know, talk the talk before they're elected, just roll right over once they're in office. And like, well,
Well, even with
this
the
is this
A's,
is
like the initial round of questioning when they were in front of the Nevada legislatures, Fabian Doñate really sticks out to me. He was really asking tough questions and putting up this front, but then he approved it anyways. Like 3 days later, there was a long weekend. Enough time to maybe grease up some palms or whatever. But I mean, were you surprised at how quickly they approved this, especially after getting? It seems like they got burned by the Raiders, right? By $750 million in taxpayer money. Um,
yeah.
of course, they got an assist
I
from
mean,
Sheldon Adelson,
Well,
and
not
the
according
A's
to
don't really
Jeremy
have a.
Guerrero.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
I mean,
I mean, were you surprised? I mean, after the Raiders, they still approved this, and I
no,
mean,
the Seattle got burned by the Seahawks right after they got burned by the Mariners, and there's lots of places do a whole series of them in a row. New York built a arena for the Nets right after they built stadiums for the Yankees and the Mets, and so I wasn't totally surprised at that. I was a little surprised after it didn't get passed in the regular session. I thought, wow, if they had figured all this out and had their ducks in a row and had lined up the votes, then they would have gotten this done in the regular session. So if this is going to special session, there must really be a chance that there's going to be opposition. But I think they just didn't have their time, to get it together. I think it was just like, okay, well, we'll figure out. And I forget what it was. It was something that the governor had vetoed of Nevada that enraged the Democrats in particular, and so there was sort of like oh, okay, well, we're not going to give you your stadium now. But so a little bit surprised the way it went down, but again, not really, because I've been through so many of these things. There's so many times that I've been like, oh man, this one, clearly is going to be the one that's going to, crash and burn. And then somehow, somebody starts counting votes in the legislature and starts saying, okay, we need to peel off 7 bodies. What can we give them? And as soon as it's just about counting votes, then you can always find some way of buying people off. I remember the Marlins deal. There was there was a county commissioner who was basically like, I need something for my district if I'm going to vote for this. And the next day she got
Right.
for district.